Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Walter Cronkite, and this is Democracy in the Balance. Today we face a moment that is both historic and deeply unsettling. Donald J. Trump is tearing apart the very fabric of American democracy, dismantling what remains of institutional checks, criminalizing dissent, and ruling with what he calls absolute immunity. To confront this dark chapter, I'm joined by two extraordinary voices: the nation's first president, General George Washington, and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence, President Thomas Jefferson. Gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Cronkite. Though the times have changed, the cause of liberty never rests. It is as important today as it was in 1776.
Indeed. It is alarming to glimpse the modern state of the republic we helped build.
Let's not mince words. President Trump, president again, has already weaponized the Justice Department, unleashed ICE on a campaign of terror, ordered retaliatory audits of his critics, and levied punitive tariffs against allied nations. General Washington, how far is this from what you envisioned for an American presidency?
It bears no resemblance. The presidency I served was bound by law, shaped by duty, and humbled by limitation. Today I see a man more interested in power than principle, vengeance than virtue.
The presidency was never meant to be a throne, but Mr. Trump occupies it like a strong man, issuing edicts, rewarding sycophants, and treating the republic as a private estate.
It reminds me of the abuses we suffered under George III, arbitrary punishment, economic coercion, and the silencing of dissent. That path led us to revolution, not stability. And if I may speak plainly, if a man views opposition as treason, he is not fit to lead free people.
Let's dive into some specifics and talk about ICE. Within the first weeks of his return to power, President Trump signed an executive order authorizing what he calls accelerated deportation operations. What that's meant in practice is the deployment of tactical agents in military-style gear to cities that defied his immigration directives. No coordination with mayors, no transparency with the public, just armored vans, federal agents in black masks, and fear in the streets. Mr. Jefferson?
Immigration enforcement, when guided by law and due process, is a proper function of government. But what we are seeing is not governance. It is theatrics of power. Militarized raids, masked agents, targeted cities, punished for defiance. That is not the rule of law. It is imperial retribution, dressed in bureaucracy. The president is not a king, and a nation governed by fear is not a republic. It is a cage.
In my lifetime, we fought a war to remove soldiers from our homes and tyrants from our laws. So I ask, what shall we call it when a president sends federal forces not to defend the people, but to discipline them, not to uphold the law, but to remind dissenters of his reach? That, sir, is not American. That is tyranny with a flag pinned to its lapel and a constitution locked in the trunk of the armored van.
As Mr. Jefferson stated, President Trump has deployed masked ICE agents into American cities, agents with no name tags, no visible identification, detaining individuals without local coordination, and sometimes without explanation. I must ask, what does it mean for a republic when law enforcement hides its face from the people it claims to protect?
It means, Mr. Cronkite, that the state no longer serves the citizen, but fears them, or worse, seeks to frighten them into silence. Masked agents patrolling free cities is not law enforcement, it is performance. It is fear made into policy. A government that hides from its people has lost its legitimacy. Liberty cannot survive when enforced by shadows. That is not the hand of justice. It is the fist of tyranny.
In our Revolutionary War, my soldiers showed their faces. Even in battle, honor demanded no less. In peace, for agents of the Republic to move among citizens like phantoms is to sow distrust and resentment. Government must be accountable. The public must know who wields force in their name. When a man with a badge wears a mask instead of a name, he becomes not a guardian, but a warning. And this nation was not built on warnings, it was built on trust.
and yet his supporters cheer. Congress remains divided. Some Republicans praise his boldness, while others, even in private, admit they're too afraid to speak. A few have already faced retaliation, sudden audits, revoked endorsements, and coordinated media smears.
Then those members of Congress are not representatives, they are courtiers, elected not to serve the people, but to survive the president's wrath. History has seen this before. Kings who demand loyalty oaths, courts that whisper, and nations that fall asleep under the lullaby of strong men.
No president should be feared by his own government. Fear is not respect. It is the death rattle of Republican virtue.
What about Trump's economic weaponry? He has imposed tariffs not on adversaries, but allies, Canada, Germany, even Japan, unless they praise his administration or adopt his trade positions. Is this diplomacy?
It is extortion with paperwork. Tariffs are tools of policy, not instruments of ego. To turn foreign relations into a loyalty contest is to abandon all pretense of principle. He is not conducting diplomacy, he is staging a global reality show and risking economic calamity.
And he forgets. Alliances are not forged through threats. They are earned through trust, and trust cannot grow where fear is planted.
Some Americans say, he's finally fighting for us. They see the crackdown on immigration, the punishment of elites, the defiance of global institutions, and call it justice. What do you say to them?
You cannot build liberty by burning law, and beware the man who promises justice only for his friends. That is not justice, it is feudalism.
And to those who say, he fights for us, I ask, who is us? Because when a leader divides the nation into friends and enemies, you will not be us for long. One misstep, one disagreement, and the sword will turn your way too.
He's also declared his intention to rewrite elements of the civil service protections, replacing independent agency heads with loyalists, and has used executive action to override scientific and regulatory decisions. Does this signal autocracy?
Autocracy doesn't arrive with trumpets. It arrives with executive orders, fired inspectors general, and the quiet normalization of abuse. When the bureaucracy fears the president more than the Constitution, you no longer have a republic. You have a regime.
And I remind all, the executive is not the nation. The nation is its people, its laws, its principles. No man, no matter how loud or loved, may rewrite the republic in his image.
To that point, President Trump has issued a sweeping executive order aimed at reshaping federal authority over elections, adding proof of citizenship requirements, restricting mail-in ballots received after Election Day, threatening states with lawsuits or funding cuts, and empowering DHS to scrutinize voter rolls. So let me ask, what should Americans do if the president, or his allies, attempts to subvert a future election?
Mr. Cronkite, when a president declares himself the arbiter of election rules and punishes states for dissent, he is waging war on democracy itself. The first duty of citizens is to refuse to comply with illegal dictates. Town halls, lawsuits by civic groups, challenges in state courts. These are acts of patriotism, not defiance. Most importantly, vote. Vote hard, vote loudly, and hold every official accountable, especially those who capitulate under threat of political violence or funding blackmail.
A republic survives only when its citizens stand as sentinels, guarding the sanctity of the vote. To face down subversion, Americans must act across all fronts. States must reinforce their election laws and defend them in court. Congress must legislate protections, secure the right to vote, ensure transparency, and codify consistent deadlines. The judiciary must hold executive overreach in check, upholding constitutional guardrails. As for the military and law enforcement, they must remain neutral. An army cannot decide an election. Only the people can decide.
Final thoughts, gentlemen. We are no longer warning of potential danger. The danger has returned to office. What now?
The people must awaken, institutions must resist, and those who love liberty must act, not with violence, but with voice. Speak, vote, protest, protect. This presidency must be watched not with awe, but with alarm.
I say this to Congress, the time for caution is over. Defend the Constitution or forsake your oath. And to the citizens, your republic does not die in one day, it dies in silence. So speak.
And what would you say to President Trump today?
Sir, history will judge you not by your ratings, but by your restraint. If you cannot lead with honor, at least try not to leave your office in disgrace.
And I say, the power you wield is not yours, it is borrowed from the people. Return it better than you found it, or return it immediately.
Words of wisdom rising above time. Thank you, Presidents Washington and Jefferson. And thank you, listeners, for refusing to look away. I'm Walter Cronkite, and that's the way it is.